There are moments that split your life in two, before and after. For me, it was a Tuesday, early spring. I'd just finished a shift at the coffee shop, hands sticky from syrup pumps and milk froth, when my dad called. He never called. Not unless someone died. "Hey, you home tonight?" he asked. His voice sounded lighter than usual, less gruff, more careful. "Yeah, why?" "Thought I'd come by. I got something I want to talk to you about." The last time we talked was 2 Christmases ago, and even that was mostly us passing the gravy and pretending everything was fine. Since my mom passed, we'd been circling each other like distant planets. Close, but never really touching. So I said, yeah, why not? He showed up with takeout, my favorite Thai place, which he hated, and a six-pack of beer. That should have tipped me off. My dad never brought beer unless it was someone's birthday, and it wasn't mine for another 2 months. We sat at the kitchen table like awkward roommates. Ate in silence for a while, the only sound the click of chopsticks against plastic containers. Then he set his fork down, cleared his throat, and said, "I've been seeing someone." That made me pause. "Okay." He looked down at the table, then back up. His eyes were different, softer than I'd ever seen them. "His name's Alan." For a second, I honestly thought I misheard him. Then I laughed. Like, genuinely laughed. Not because I thought it was a joke, but because it felt so wildly impossible. My dad? A guy who wore steel-toe boots to the grocery store? Who once said rom-coms were unrealistic crap? That dad? He smiled. Nervous, kind of embarrassed, but he didn't take it back. "Yeah, I know. It's a lot." "No," I said quickly, my heart suddenly in my throat. "It's not that. It's just, I didn't see it coming." "Neither did I," he said. "Not for a long time." He told me the rest slowly, cautiously, like he was stepping over a minefield, that he'd known since before Mom, that he buried it, that he loved her but always kept a piece of himself locked away, that after she passed, he started seeing a therapist, and then he met Alan. And now, here we were. "I didn't want to leave this world without ever being honest about who I am," he said. "I don't expect you to understand, but I hope you can accept it." I sat back in my chair, trying to breathe past the weight in my chest. Because I did understand. Too well. But I wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. Instead, I just nodded. "Yeah, Dad. Of course I accept it." And that was the first time in my life I saw him cry. After that night, things didn't go back to normal. But they didn't fall apart either. Dad started coming over more often. We'd sit on my balcony, drink cheap beer, and talk. Actually talk. About books, about Mom, about growing older, and feeling like you missed a part of your life. It was weird at first. Like we were rebuilding our relationship from scratch, both of us trying to figure out what it meant to know this new version of the other. He told me about Alan over time. How they met at a community art class. Ceramics, of all things. "Don't laugh," he'd said. "Turns out I'm terrible at bowls, but decent with mugs." He described Alan as kind, patient, with a crooked smile and a thing for indie music. They'd been seeing each other for almost a year before Dad told me. I think that was what stunned me most. Not just that he was gay, but that he'd been carrying this whole secret relationship for months, while we were still playing the part of surface-level father and son. And me? I'd been carrying something too. I hadn't come out to anyone. Not my friends, not my coworkers, not even myself, fully. There were moments. Times I thought I might say it out loud, test the words, even just in the mirror. But I always chickened out. Maybe it was growing up in a house where things were always just a little too quiet, where emotions were something you dealt with privately, like bad plumbing. You noticed it, but you didn't talk about it unless it overflowed. I never saw my dad hug another man. I never saw anyone on TV who looked like me or loved the way I suspected I might, so I kept it in. I dated girls in high school, pretended to be into it. In college, I avoided dating altogether, blamed it on school. Then work. Then the general state of the world. But now my dad. My emotionally constipated, flannel-wearing, don't-waste-food dad was out here going to art classes with his boyfriend and living his truth at 62. And I was still in the closet at 24. That realization sat with me like a rock in my stomach. It followed me through the days that came after, at work, at the gym, even brushing my teeth. It was like the universe was whispering, "So what's your excuse?" Then one Saturday, Dad invited me to lunch. "Alan wants to meet you," he said, like it was the most casual thing in the world. I almost said no, but something in me knew I needed to go. We met at this little cafe by the lake. Alan was already there when I arrived. Tall, thin, with silver hair pulled back in a low ponytail and this relaxed energy, like someone who had nothing to prove. "Hey, you must be Josh," he said, standing to shake my hand. "I've heard a lot about you." "Hope it wasn't all bad," I joked, trying to keep my nerves at bay. He laughed. "Mostly good, a few embarrassing stories." Of course. Dad showed up a few minutes later, late as usual, carrying an armful of books he'd borrowed from the library and forgot to return. We sat, ordered food, and I watched the way he looked at Alan, soft, present, comfortable in a way I'd never seen before. It was unsettling and beautiful. And it made me realize something. If he could find that, after years of hiding, after all the fear and shame, why couldn't I? It was quiet when I got home that night. I kicked off my shoes, collapsed on the couch, and just stared at the ceiling. My apartment was clean, minimal, comfortable, but it didn't feel like home. Not really. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of pretending. All those nights spent avoiding real conversations, the awkward half-lies, the missed connections. I thought about the dates I'd ghosted, the guys I'd flirted with anonymously on apps but never met in real life. I'd built a closet within a closet. Neat, invisible, lonely. That night, I opened the Notes app on my phone and just wrote one sentence. "I think I'm ready." I didn't send it to anyone, I just needed to see it typed out. A placeholder. A promise. The next morning, I called my best friend, Leo. We'd been friends since freshman year. He was the loud, theatrical one, always unapologetically himself. And he'd come out sophomore year like it was nothing. I envied that about him. We hadn't talked much lately. Life, work, whatever. But when he picked up, his voice was the same as always. Warm and a little too energetic for 10 a.m. "Josh? Wow, is this a ghost from the past?" "Hey," I said, laughing nervously. "You got a second?" "Sure. What's up?" I hesitated. My heart was pounding. Why was this so hard? Then I just blurted it out. "I'm gay." Silence, for maybe half a second. Then, "Josh, dude, are you serious?" "That's amazing. I mean, not that I didn't kind of suspect. Your Instagram likes are like 60% Timothy Chalamet fan edits, but still." I laughed, tension leaving my body all at once. "Jesus, that obvious?" "Only to people who love you, and I'm really proud of you, man." We talked for an hour. About everything. How long I'd known, why I waited, what finally changed. I told him about my dad, about Alan, about that lunch by the lake that cracked something open inside me. By the end of the call, I felt something I hadn't in years. Free. But that was just step one. Over the next few weeks, I told a few more people. My coworker, Mia, who cried and hugged me in the back room of the cafe. My cousin Tyler, who shrugged and said, "Cool. So when are you getting on Tinder?" Each time, it got easier. Each time, I felt lighter. I hadn't told Dad yet, though. Not because I was afraid he'd react badly. If anything, I knew he'd understand better than anyone. But because it felt intimate. Like telling a secret to someone who used to be part of the reason you kept it in. Still, I knew I had to. For both of us. So one night, I invited him over. Ordered pizza. Opened a bottle of wine. We sat on my couch, the TV playing softly in the background, not really watching it. And I said, "Dad, I've got something to tell you." He looked at me, already sensing it was important. "I'm gay," I said. "I think I've known for a long time. I was just scared. Of everything." He didn't say anything right away. He just reached over, placed a hand on my shoulder, and gave it a squeeze. "Me too," he said, "for most of my life." And that was the moment I realized We weren't just father and son anymore. We were survivors of the same storm. After that night, everything felt different between us, but in the best possible way. It wasn't like we suddenly turned into a sitcom father-son duo who shared everything and hugged every 5 minutes. No, it was more subtle than that. It was in the way we didn't have to pretend anymore. The silence between us stopped being awkward. It just felt comfortable. One Saturday morning a few weeks later, we ended up at this local flea market. I'd mentioned offhand that I needed a new bookshelf, and Dad insisted on tagging along, said he needed more ugly mugs for his growing Allen collection. Apparently, Alan had a thing for weird ceramic drinkware. We wandered through the stalls, sipping bad coffee and making fun of each other's taste in furniture. It was normal, easy, but also surreal, in a way. Because 5 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined this version of my dad existing. And 6 months ago, I wouldn't have imagined sharing my truth with him. At one point, we passed a stall selling vintage records. Alan would love this, he said, picking up an old Bowie album. And I found myself smiling. Not just because it was nice seeing him happy, but because I wanted that too. Someone to share those little moments with. I didn't say it out loud, but I think he sensed it. "You dating anyone?" he asked casually, flipping through a bin of jazz vinyl. I blinked. No, not yet. You thinking about it?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "I think I am." He nodded like it made sense. "It's weird, starting late. I still get nervous sometimes. Like I'm 20 again, and everything feels new and terrifying." I laughed. "You're not the only one." "Just don't wait too long," he said. "You deserve to have that part of life too." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. Not just from anyone, but from him. That night, I re-downloaded the dating app I'd deleted months ago. I actually filled out the bio this time, uploaded a decent photo or two, and after a long moment of internal screaming, checked the box that said, "Looking for men." I didn't expect much, maybe a few awkward messages, a couple of dead-end convos, but I matched with this guy named Luca almost immediately. He had messy dark curls, a crooked smile, and a bio that read, "Yes, I'll split fries with you." It felt like a good start. Our first few messages were nothing special, just the usual, "Hey, where are you from? What do you do?" kind of stuff. But something about him felt different, easy, familiar. We ended up texting late into the night, talking about everything from our favorite childhood snacks to the most embarrassing music in our playlists. His was Barbie Girl. Mine was Mambo No. 5, Don't Judge. By the third night, he asked if I wanted to grab a drink. And for the first time in a long while, I said yes without hesitation. I nearly bailed an hour before the date. Not because of Luca. He'd been great, funny, and normal, and genuinely interested. But because I suddenly felt like a complete fraud. Like I was just playing dress-up in someone else's life. I'd stood in front of the mirror, buttoning and unbuttoning the same navy shirt 3 times, wondering what the hell I was doing. But then I got a text from Dad. "Good luck tonight. Just be yourself. He's lucky to meet you." That hit harder than I expected. Maybe because it came from the one person I used to be most afraid of disappointing. Or maybe because it was the exact thing I needed to hear. So I went. We met at this small bar downtown. Cozy lighting, soft music, not too crowded. Luca was already at a corner table when I arrived, wearing a denim jacket and that same lopsided grin from his profile picture. He stood up when he saw me. "Josh, right?" "Hey," I said, smiling back. "Yeah, you must be Luca." Guilty. We sat, ordered drinks, and, surprisingly, none of it felt awkward. Conversation flowed easily. He told me about his job teaching art at a middle school, the chaotic energy of preteens with paintbrushes. I told him about the cafe, about my attempts to figure out what I actually wanted to do long-term. Somewhere between our second round and him describing the absolute hell that is middle school talent shows, I realized I wasn't nervous anymore. I was actually having fun. At one point, Luca leaned in a little and said, "You know, I wouldn't have guessed this was your first date. It's that obvious." He laughed. "No, not at all. You just seem comfortable." Which is nice. Most guys are a mess on first dates. I took a sip of my drink to buy time. "I think I'm just relieved you're not a serial killer." "That's fair," he said with a grin. "I do give off a strong, lures guys into the woods vibe." "Just a little." We walked for a bit after, neither of us ready to end it yet. The air was cool, that kind of spring chill that makes you wish you'd brought a slightly warmer jacket. He offered me his. I declined. He insisted, so I wore it. When we reached the corner near my place, there was this quiet pause. That classic movie moment where you're both trying to decide what happens next. "I had a great time," I said, already knowing I wanted to see him again. "Me too," Lucas said. "You're kind of awesome," I laughed. "Kind of?" He stepped a little closer. "Okay, very awesome." And then, with that same easy confidence he'd had all night, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic or intense or anything movie-worthy, but it was warm, gentle, real. When we pulled back, I was smiling like an idiot, and so was he. "Good night, Josh." "Good night, Luca." I walked inside, feeling lighter than I had in years. I didn't tell Dad about the kiss right away. It wasn't that I was hiding it. I just wanted to keep it to myself for a while, let it settle, let it be mine. But that didn't stop him from asking. "So how'd the date go?" he asked a few days later. We were walking through a local park after dinner, just killing time. It had become our new thing, an unspoken ritual of quiet steps and slow conversation. "It went well," I said, maybe a little too casually. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He gave me a look, half smile, half smirk. "Are you seeing him again?" "Tomorrow," I said, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets. "We're grabbing dinner." Dad nodded like he was proud of himself. "See? Told you. You're not as bad at this as you thought." "Don't jinx it," I muttered, but I was grinning. Luca and I went out again. And again. Dinners turned into weekend plans. Texts turned into late-night phone calls. And eventually, one lazy Sunday morning, I woke up with him tangled in my sheets, his head on my chest, both of us half asleep and warm in a way I hadn't realized I'd missed until I had it. We weren't official yet, but something real was forming between us, and I could feel myself changing, getting braver, softer, more open. One afternoon, while I was helping Dad hang a new light fixture in the garage, one he didn't need but insisted was modern ambiance, he suddenly said, "Alan wants to have you and Luca over for dinner." I looked up from the screwdriver in my hand. "Wait, you told Alan about him?" Dad gave me a deadpan look. "Josh, I live with the man. Of course I told him." I laughed. "Right. He wants to cook. He's weirdly good at fancy pasta." I mean, yeah, sure, that could be nice. And it was. A week later, Luca and I drove out to Dad's place, an older craftsman-style house with a creaky porch and an absurd number of wind chimes. Alan greeted us at the door wearing an apron that said, "Yes, chef," and immediately offered Luca wine like they'd been best friends in another life. The night went better than I expected. We ate, talked, and even played a board game that Alan pulled out just for fun, but was clearly a planned attack to show off his strategic dominance. Luca held his own, which I think earned him some serious points in Dad's eyes. At one point, I caught Dad looking at me from across the table. Just a quick glance, but full of something I hadn't seen before. Pride, maybe. Or peace. It made me realize something. We were both getting second chances. Different, but equal. He'd found someone after decades of silence. I'd found someone just as I was learning to use my voice. And somehow, our timing, however late, however imperfect, had brought us here, at the same table, laughing, sharing, living. Things settled into a rhythm after that, a new kind of normal. Luca and I started spending weekends together, some at his place, some at mine. He was the kind of guy who liked making breakfast even if we didn't get out of bed until noon, who'd hum along to songs in the grocery store aisle and never cared who heard. He made the quiet parts of life feel a little louder, a little more alive. Dad kept doing his thing, building shelves, taking long walks with Alan, slowly turning his backyard into some kind of retirement paradise with too many bird feeders and an overly ambitious vegetable garden. We still saw each other regularly, but now there was no tension, no unspoken anything. We were just us, father and son, two men who had finally stopped pretending. One Sunday afternoon, we were all at Dad's place for a cookout. Alan was manning the grill like it was a Michelin star kitchen. Luca and I were on lawn chairs, watching Dad try and install solar string lights along the fence even though the sun wasn't going to set for hours. "You know," Luca said, sipping his lemonade, "your dad's kind of a badass." I glanced over. Dad was on a ladder, squinting into the sun, zip-tying the cord to a beam. That's one word for him. "I'm serious," Luca said. "Coming out at his age? That takes guts." "Yeah," I said quietly, "it really does." There was a beat of silence, just the sound of birds chirping and Alan shouting something about undercooked corn. Then Luca nudged me. "And you, by the way, I'm proud of you too." I looked at him, surprised by how much that landed. "Thanks," I said. "I think I'm finally proud of me too." Later that evening, Dad pulled me aside while Luca and Alan argued over the best way to cut watermelon. "I've been meaning to say something," he said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "You seem different lately." "Different how?" "Lighter," he said, "like something unlatched inside you." I didn't know what to say. He wasn't wrong. "I guess I just stopped waiting for permission," I said finally. "To be who I actually am." He nodded, his eyes a little watery in that way he'd never admit. "That's a good thing," he said. "I'm proud of you." It was the first time he'd ever said that out loud, and it hit me harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to reply, but he clapped a hand on my shoulder before I could. "Let's eat before Alan lectures us on the art of marinating again," I laughed, following him back to the table. And as we all sat down under the string lights he'd finally managed to hang, plates full, laughter in the air, I realized something. We didn't miss out. We just started late. And sometimes, that's enough. 1 year later, I used to think stories like ours didn't really happen. Not outside of movies. Not without some tragic ending or at least a few irreparable cracks. But looking back now, 1 year since I came out, since Dad did the same, it doesn't feel like a story anymore. Just life. Ours. A lot's changed in a year. Luca and I moved in together last month. We found this little 2-bedroom apartment near the river. Nothing fancy, but it has good light and an old balcony that creaks when you step on it wrong. The first night we spent there, we had no furniture. Just pizza on the floor, a speaker playing 2000 throwbacks, and his head in my lap while we stared up at the ceiling fan spinning too fast. I remember thinking, so this is what peace feels like. It's not all perfect. We argue sometimes, usually over stupid things like laundry or who left the sink full of dishes, but we always find our way back. And that's new for me, the returning part. I used to think love was this all-or-nothing leap. Now I know it's in the small returns. The way he still kisses me on the forehead before I leave for work. The way he puts my phone on the charger when I forget. And Dad? He and Alan are still going strong. Last month, they took a road trip through the Southwest in a rented camper van. They sent postcards like it was 1996, each one with some ridiculous inside joke or snapshot of Dad awkwardly standing in front of a canyon. Alan's handwriting is terrible, but he always adds a note at the bottom. "Your dad is happier than I've ever seen him." He is. He's different now. Softer around the edges. More open with how he feels. We talk more. Really talk. Not just about relationships or memories, but about everything. Politics. Regret. Hope. Therapy. He's even reading a novel Luca recommended. Some queer romance about 2 guys in Italy. And the fact that my 63-year-old father is annotating it in the margins might be the single most surreal thing I've ever witnessed. He still calls me kid, even though I'm 25 and have bills and back pain now. But I let him. I think part of him is trying to reclaim time, not out of guilt, just love. One afternoon we were out at lunch, just me and him, and he asked if I'd ever thought about what it would have been like if he had come out earlier. If we'd both known ourselves sooner. I told him the truth. Yeah, of course. Sometimes I wonder who I could have been if I'd started this chapter at 18 instead of 24. Who he might have been if he hadn't buried himself for so long. But then he looked at me and said maybe we had to be exactly who we were to become who we are now. And I think he's right. Coming out late doesn't mean coming up short. It just means it took a little longer to get here. And here's not so bad. I'm out to everyone now. Friends. Coworkers. Even the extended family I used to avoid during the holidays. It was awkward at first. There were some weird conversations, some silence. But there were also hugs, acceptance, even celebration. One of my uncles pulled me aside at a barbecue last week and said, "Your dad told me everything, and for what it's worth, I'm glad you're both happy." That word, happy, hits different now, because it's not the kind of happy you post about or announce in big, bold letters. It's the quiet kind. The kind that hums in the background of your life, like a song you didn't know you loved until you caught yourself singing along. That's the kind of happy we're building. One morning at a time. And maybe we didn't start our stories the way most people do, but we're finishing them together. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing.